Good evening, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to Remind's Live Hangout. I'm Clara Galan, a former educator on the marketing team here at Remind, and I'm excited to discuss what it means to be a connected educator and share some strategies for staying connected to other teachers both in your local community and all around the world. I'm joined here tonight by some amazing connected educators. Lisa Dabbs, former principal and NT Chat founder, so that's New Teacher Chat, author, blogger, and social media support at Edutopia. So welcome, Lisa. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for having me, Clara.
And Tom Murray, who's the State and District Digital Learning Director and author. Welcome, Tom.
Hi, everybody. I'm not going to hit Lisa's high pitch, but it's good to see everybody today as well.
And Jimmy Casas, who's a high school principal, author, and motivational speaker, and co-founder of Iowa Chat. Welcome, Jimmy.
Thank you, Clara. Nice to see you.
And we've got Kyle Pace, instructional technology specialist and Google certified teacher, and Google Educator Group Kansas City leader. So thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Clara. Great to be here.
Cool. So welcome, everyone, and again, thanks for tuning in. So why don't we get started? So for those who are tuning in and aren't as familiar with the term connected educator, what does it mean to be a connected educator? So why don't we start with Lisa. Lisa, what does being a connected educator mean to you, and how has it impacted your life?
Sure, I'd love to take a stab at that. You know, Clara, back in 2009 when I started on Twitter as an educational consultant working for a big multi-million-dollar company, I just saw it as just the way that it was back then. You know, here's food, here's my Starbucks, hello, bye. And my son and I actually joined, and it was really, really ridiculous and really funny. So he said, Mom, I'm just connecting my account. I said, you know, this Twitter thing, that it's going to go somewhere. I'm gonna stay connected to it. And so I stayed off of it for quite a while until late 2009 when I jumped back in and I got first connected to Shelley Terrell. And I began to connect through her. She was my really first point of connection where I really began to feel like I could learn how to be somebody who was connected to other educators around the world besides those that had been in my building. So that story of connecting to her and then how I was able to grow in my connections really says to me that to be a connected educator, you really need to be willing to take a risk and reach out and find other people that are like-minded and maybe not so like-minded to help you grow as a professional. And when I began to get connected, she was the one that actually mentored me through becoming a blogger. And once I became a blogger, that helped me to connect to even a greater group of educators who are just so fantastic and so talented. So to me, being a connected educator is taking that risk, stepping out, growing beyond your personal safe space, and benefiting from those connections.
Wow, and it sounds that it's just so powerful, you know, those connections that you form online. It's not only for your teaching practice, but then also forms a sense emotionally when you're teaching, how you can really... Awesome, thanks so much, Lisa. Jimmy, what does it mean to be a connected educator to you?
I look at it a couple different ways. Number one, I think for me personally, what it does is it allows me to be a part of a larger community. And so one of the things that's I've always kind of challenged myself and challenged others is who is helping you get better. And whether it's Twitter, or whether it's blogging, or what other forms of social media in order to get connected, it's trying to figure out how do I surround myself with other educators who, number one, know more than I do, who are more knowledgeable, who are more skilled, to help me continue to grow and develop as an educator. And so, and then lastly, you know, in terms of from being a part of a larger community, now I feel like I'm a part of that community who helps others connect to a larger community. So I kind of try to use it as an opportunity to build community, whether it's in my school, whether it's in my own community, whether it's at the state level or the national level. And so I kind of see this whole notion of how do we build and continue to support these larger communities to support one another.
Awesome, Jimmy. Thanks so much for sharing. It sounds like that's really had a huge impact, and what's awesome about that is connecting online with other educators, then you in turn can support, other communities and help education kind of change as a whole. Very cool. So Tom, what about you? What does being a connected educator mean to you?
Clara, I think so many times educators feel so much on educators' little island. They feel all by themselves. And I remember being a teacher and going in my classroom and closing my door and feeling incredibly isolated. I remember being a principal and often feeling in the office by myself and kind of just a different spot than my teachers. And often it was just I felt alone, quite honestly. And I think teaching can be an extremely lonely profession if you don't connect yourself. So for me, becoming connected means being able to reach out like somebody, Lisa in California, or Kyle in Kansas City, or Jimmy in Iowa, to help me be better for kids tomorrow. So now working at the federal level, it's great to have connections all over the country that really challenge me and make me better. When I was a tech director, I was the only one in my school district. And to help me grow professionally, I was able to connect with people around the nation that were doing similar things to me, which helped if I was doing an initiative or a rollout or something. I could rely on people all around the nation that were doing similar to what I was doing, that shared similar passions, and that ultimately wanted to help kids. So it's a way to grow that you cannot do if you're by yourself behind a classroom door and in an office behind an office door. It's just a way to grow and a way to connect with others around the nation.
Really, thanks for sharing. Yeah, I think, like you said, it's something as teachers, and it brings us a way to not be isolated and to be able to connect with other teachers. Even I can totally relate to that. As I was the only Spanish teacher in my school, other teachers to connect with, to bounce ideas off of. And when I discovered Twitter and I discovered other places online that I could connect, it was so powerful in helping me to improve my teaching practice. So Kyle, can you relate to that as well? What does it mean, educator?
Yeah, absolutely. I think being a connected educator, I think it's all about remaining a learner first and a teacher second, because I don't think any educator that is interested in remaining relevant in the profession would want to teach the same year 30 times. And so I think that's what being a connected educator is all about, is remaining a learner first. And the beauty of being a connected educator, I think also, is there isn't just one way to do that. And so, I think that's a great thing about it. But it's all about putting yourself out there in digital spaces, and what that digital space is for you may not be that digital space for me. But I've been in these various digital spaces for 6 years now, and a fantastic byproduct of that is, Jimmy kind of touched on this. One of the things that I say want a great byproduct for me is I've been able to help connect dots for people. So after I've become so connected, I get to help other people do the same. So even if they reach out to me asking for help, if I don't know the answer, which I'm not afraid to admit, if I don't, I likely know someone else who to connect them up with. So I love doing that just as much as learning for myself.
Yeah. Great. And it sounds like for all of you, being connected online to other teachers has had such a powerful effect on your life, on your teaching practice. So for those out there who want to connect with other teachers, what are some tools you use or places you go online or in person to connect with other teachers? And to any of you who can think, off the top of your head, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Well, I think the obvious answer for being connected, and I think people often associated connected educators with Twitter. I think that's a natural tendency for people, but I think it goes far beyond that. I think one of the best ways to connect is in person, and so when I see people at, whether it's an EdCamp or being a connected educator even in my own district, and I know that sounds kind of silly, but when I was in a district, you don't want to lose the connections of the people across the hall or as a staff or across your district. So one way is to connect is to get together with other educators regularly. It doesn't have to be just through social media, although to me that's the first thing that jumps out is the social media aspect, but not losing those face-to-face connections and that in-person conversation and professional learning is really vital. But to me, the obvious answer is Twitter and connecting with people through social media in that regard.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We actually just published an article on our blog last week that talked about it's not only connecting online, but also in person too. Like at EdCamps, you can connect in person. If you go to edcamp.org, you can see the local EdCamps in your area and ways that you can connect with teachers in your local area. So I'd love to expand more on the idea of EdCamps too. Maybe Lisa, can you share a little bit about like what is EdCamp and how can teachers be connected more through EdCamps?
Sure, I'd love to, Clara. You know, just came back from EdCamp San Diego, and it was a fabulous experience. And I have to say that kudos to them. They ran a fabulous EdCamp. And for me, being on the first team that started the first EdCamp in California was really exciting. And the bottom line for me about what an EdCamp is, it's teachers leading teachers. It's teachers providing professional development for other teachers. It's being able to have the liberty and the ability and to share something that you're passionate about and have a conversation about it. And so EdCamp is just so freeing. It's just so fantastic. It's not some big company coming in and saying, thou shalt do this and sit and listen for, 3 hours or 6 hours, but rather it's teacher-driven, teacher-led, and it creates these communities that will grow, speaking of being connected. So as you're at an EdCamp and you're learning with others there, you're really learning about what's passionate for them and then figuring out, is that something that you're passionate about too? And the beauty of that is if you end up in a session and you're really not that passionate about it, we could do the special thing as, with and there's a great term for it, and so forgive me, I've forgotten it, but vote with your feet. And if I don't like a session that I'm in, even though it's being led by maybe a phenomenal teacher, I can vote with my feet and walk out and find another session that will feed my needs, feed my passions, and help me to grow. So the freeness and the openness and the ability to share with educators in communities, depending for us in Southern California, for others it might be Pennsylvania, it might be New York, Northern California. For me, it's particularly Southern California as part of the EdCamp LA organizational team, which I have to put a plug in. EdCamp LA is coming up January 17th, so even if you're not in Southern California, make plans to join us because LA is a great place to visit. So for me, that's what EdCamp is about. It's about teachers leading teachers and being able to have that ability to share what is passionate for them, and then learning and growing from that, and then making those connections. If I hear something great about how to do a Google Hangout, or how to use a green screen, or how to use an app smashing piece, I can take that back and connect with that teacher if I forget on the way back home and say, oh, you did such a great job leading that app smashing thing, I really want to learn. So just so powerful and just so freeing and just so open.
Yeah, definitely, Lisa. And what I love so much about EdCamps continues beyond the EdCamp as well. So different EdCamps, will follow each other on Twitter and then continue that conversation, whether it be through, a Twitter chat or through creating class to continue the communication and sharing of resources. It's just such a powerful way to connect, even with teachers that are outside your community. So I know in person is really important too, but are there other ways that teachers can connect online? I know we talked a little bit about Twitter, but maybe we could focus a little bit on the Twitter chat and join. Jimmy, do you want to shed any light on that?
Sure. Well, Tom, I think made an excellent point, because I don't think that we ever want to lose sight that the most important connection is still face-to-face. But those of us who have been to conferences, or we've been to EdCamps, or we've been on chats, or we've done Google Hangouts, all of a sudden when we go to a conference, or when we go to these locations, all of a sudden those connections are a lot more meaningful. We've heard this time and time again that when people get there, there's a certain energy, there's a different feel to the entire conference, because now you feel like you know these people. And because you've connected with them, you've been in communication with them, you've had conversations with them online for months or even up to a year or 2 years. And then there's a certain excitement and energy about meeting these individuals. And then what you find out is that they're actually even more genuine, more caring, more willing to help once you meet them in person. And so then you leave those, and then the conversation no longer ends. It's not like back in the day we used to go to conferences and you'd meet a couple people, you'd go back home, and that was pretty much it. And so now the conversations continue to grow. They continue to, we foster these relationships. And so it is important that we have to recognize that it is up to us to maintain those relationships. But what I have found out on Twitter, and I'm just going to use that as an example, is that everybody has an equal voice. And I think that's what I love about it. It doesn't matter whether you're a student, a superintendent, a teacher, a parent, or whatever your role is, everybody has an equal voice on Twitter. And I would say the same thing now when I read blogs and I've met the individual. It's like I read it in their voice. And it's so much more meaningful and so much more powerful. And it just, and honestly, it makes me really proud to know these people, because the bottom line is we're all in this for the same reason, and we want to help kids. And what I love about it is everybody wants to help everybody get better, and that's what it really should be all about. And that's what I love about our profession.
I love that. You have such a good point that it's all about, helping students, helping kids grow, and we're all in this together. We're all have the same goals. So just being able to form a community around that, whether it be in your own school or helping someone else's school, it's just such a powerful means of education. Kyle, have you used Twitter or EdCamps to connect with other educators, or are there any methods or strategies you use?
I think Twitter and blogging would be two probably of the most popular ones. But there, for some people though, it could be using Google+. It could be joining a Google+ community. There are hundreds of fantastic education-related Google+ communities for educators to join. So, if tweeting or blogging maybe doesn't really sound like your thing, there's loads of communities that are always sharing great stuff that you could join on Google+. It could also be if you're already using a tool like Digo to curate information that you find online. There's tons of great groups on tools like Digo to join as well. So, like I said, the beauty is there's not just one way. There's not one way that's more right than the other. It's the point is that you're doing something to move yourself forward.
Yeah, and there are many Google Educator communities on Google+ too. So for Google Certified Teachers, is that correct, Kyle?
Yep, that's right. Google Education Groups, GEGs, is what those are called. Yep.
Clara, another example I think of a great tool that's out there is actually Voxer. And Voxer is a great tool to help people connect, certainly on a deeper level. I know that, for instance, Twitter's been great to help me get introduced to people, to have short conversations, to be pointed towards resources. But I was able to connect with a group of guys this summer on Voxer, actually this past spring, Jimmy being one of them, and there's about 10 guys in this one particular group that we are, and we talk a lot about just instructional things. There's a handful of principals, elementary and secondary, and a superintendent or two, and so when something comes up, we have we're talking educational issues, and then we have a strand that's just being friends and just kind of hanging out as a group. And so it's really allowed us to get even deeper, as opposed to just 140 characters or just through a couple direct messages, and really have conversations where you can read intonation and hear everything from sarcasm to laughs to really read people's voices and get. So we've had really serious conversations and conversations that were completely off topic and had nothing to do with education that were just fun as well. So that's a great tool to connect with others too.
Yeah, I've definitely myself, as you guys know, recently discovered the power of Voxer. Actually, also on a Voxer chat, so that's kind of how we reached out initially. But I love that too. I love being able to send videos and just being able to connect. So I wanted to talk a little bit about cues. So these cues are only about connecting with your colleagues, but also to community who are incredibly busy but want to see the family space. Did we get that? It looks like there's a little bit of feedback going on.
Clara, can you repeat that? I think you cut out there a little bit.
Yeah.
Put this. There we go.
I went ahead and muted myself, and I think that might help.
Okay, great. So as we talked a lot about being connected to other educators, but being connected isn't only about, connecting to your colleagues, but also to your school community. So do you have any advice for teachers who are incredibly busy but want to stay connected to the families they serve? Lisa, why don't we start with you? Are there any tools that you use or know of to connect with the entire school community?
Sure, Claire, I'd love to talk about that. First of all, I think that, I spent 14 years as a school principal, and I really am jealous sometimes of my administrator, colleagues. I still call them colleagues because I still retain my admin credential here in California. But I missed out on the opportunities that are so, prevalent and vibrant today to be able to reach out to my parent communities. I was reaching out old school, robocalls and flyers home and newsletters home and stuff on the marquee in front of my school. So, now there are so many more vibrant ways that we can get in touch with parents and stay connected to them. And, one of the things that I'm really enjoying seeing, Clara, is the kinds of things that you are all doing with Remind. And it's just so wonderful to see how that application is just growing and developing. And it was interesting because at EdCamps San Diego, there were tons of teachers who didn't know about Remind. So it was really a fun opportunity to be in a session with Rachel where we talked about, one of your colleagues, where we talked about the power of Remind and what it can do for you as a classroom teacher, as a principal, as a superintendent, other kind of admin, tech director. And even in my case, I'm using it because, as most of you may or may not know, I am the founder of New Teacher Chat. And so my desire to connect new and pre-service teachers who need support, who might be struggling, as we all were in those first early days of teaching, I'm using Remind to reach out to them and connect to them beyond my chat. So I really love the idea of using an application like Remind. And then secondly, I just like to say I love the way that I'm seeing administrators and teachers using Facebook groups for their schools, using blogging with their schools, having their students be a part of that, and also setting up something like a Google site where there can be access to immediate information. And if a parent is busy, they're not able to connect as well as they'd like, or a teacher is busy and not able to connect as well as they'd like, they can quickly go to the Facebook group, to the blog, and figure out what it is that they might have missed. So I think those are powerful tools that we have at our disposal now that we didn't have before. And like I said before, I'm kind of jealous that I really didn't get the chance to use them in my time as an administrator. So kudos to everybody else that's doing that to help connect the busy teacher in a way that we weren't able to do before.
Yeah, definitely. And I think those are all, really powerful tools that you mentioned. Remind being one, but also, Facebook group or social media, including Twitter. I've seen a lot of teachers use it to connect with their entire school community, or administrators to connect with their staff. I think, Remind can be a very powerful tool for Twitter chats, since we'll create a Remind group. They can send resources or topics for the next education chat the next week, or different links or voice clips. So it can be really powerful in that context as well. Tom, are there any other ways that you connect to your school community or just different teachers in your local area?
Sure. I was going to mention, just as a resource for anybody that's watching tonight, two of our good friends, Joe Sanfilippo and Tony Sinanis, just released a book from Corwin on branding your school, and they share a lot of these. It's this exact topic, and they share how do you use things like Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, and they really just get to the heart of we need to meet parents where they are. We need to, excuse me, everything is mobile these days. And we know that, so if we're not providing mobile resources for parents, we're obsolete as schools. I can remember 15 years ago in my first year teaching, creating the newsletter that I would do at Microsoft Publisher. I'd print it out, I'd send it home, and the parents would find out about the pictures from our field trip 30 days after we took it. But today, they're watching it in real time through things like Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. And so one way to do it is to meet parents where they are through the tools that our parents are using, and that's a great resource, the book that Joe and Tony Tony just released, because it shares, how do you get over some of those fears, and how do you connect with the community to ultimately brand our school so that we're effectively telling our story well. At the teacher level, we're effectively sharing what's going on as a classroom. At the principal level, we're branding our schools so that we can really build community and build that culture. And those are just some tools from a social media end that they share that I also agree with, that I think are phenomenal ways to build our community.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. You brought up a really great point about branding your school and letting the whole community know about it. And there's one teacher in particular, or administrator now he is, in Texas, Todd Neslony, and he's done an amazing job of just bringing his entire school community together. So it's not only about, the students and the families, but also the local community and what they can do. And sharing pictures, like you said, on Twitter or through Remind, creating a Remind class to do that. It really brings a window into the school to people that otherwise couldn't be a classroom, including parents. So, Jimmy, is there anything that you use in particular to connect to your school community and keep everyone informed?
Yeah, I mean, similar. I think it's all been mentioned here already, whether it's Remind, whether they're different types. I'm going to just change a direction a little bit because I think it is important, and Lisa mentioned it, maybe 10 or 15 years ago we would have communicated with our school communities in different ways through newsletters, then eventually it was through email blasts and those types of things. But I also think when we're talking about branding our schools and opening up our community and sharing our stories, those stories also have to be told from a different perspective, not just the principal's perspective, but from the teacher's perspective, from the student's perspective. So where does student voice play a part in this? Where are the teachers playing a part in this? So, whether it's through a staff blog, maybe it's student blogs, we're seeing this more and more through kid blog, those types of things, Instagram, using Storify to take to capture the pictures and to share the story of your school. I know people that are using video, they're using YouTube to have kids share the story of what's happening in their school on a daily basis, like Tom said, in real time. So, it's one thing for the principal to tell a story, but it's a lot more, in my opinion, impactful when that story is being told from the student's perspective and from your staff's perspective.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it really empowers the teacher too, and the students as well. They're bringing a voice, to their school community, and also to their learning experience. So again, social media is a powerful tool for that. Kyle, did you have anything to add in terms of strategies or tools that you use to connect with the entire city?
Yeah, I think, again, I know we've said Twitter more than once, but that would be the primary one that, we've started to see a lot of our administrators use in my district and a lot of our teachers use in my district, creating classroom Twitter accounts. And I think it's fantastic just to see how that has exploded over the last year. Kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. It's not just limited to middle school and high school. The elementary gang is joining in just as much. Our administrators are joining in, doing a phenomenal job. And it's like you said, it's all about sharing the great things that are happening. When I talk to administrators, I tell them, you should be the chief storyteller of what's happening at your school and sharing all those great things. And using all these different tools that allow us to be connected educators are also fantastic for connecting to the community as well. And and giving almost like a real-time glimpse to the community about what's happening at school during the day. Or parents think it's fantastic when their child's teacher shares out pictures on the class Twitter account during the day and they see their student. They're participating in an activity. And the bottom line, I think, with all of this, especially when we're using it to reach out to the community, is we are being effective models of good use. And we continue to hear a lot of the negative, but we have to keep using this for good, modeling good use. Our students definitely need to see it, our colleagues need to see it, and the community needs to see it as well.
You know, Kyle, I think a really good example of that, if I could jump in there, Clara, I remember the first time I went to visit a good friend of mine who was a principal at the time, Joe Mazza, and he had a computer screen. When I would walk in, it was like a TV screen, and I walked into his building, and I was watching tweets come through of a teacher that was on a field trip. And so there we could actually see in real time what the kiddos were doing. And think about how that changes the conversation when a child gets home. No longer is it the parent saying, you know, like, hey, how was school today? Good. What'd you do? Nothing. You're okay? Yep, it was fine. And not getting and having that to a different conversation of, hey, I saw the picture when you were doing this. What was going on there? I saw this at the field trip. Tell me about it. And it changes the conversation, and it really engages the parents even more. And it starts to really build trust because it also shows transparency from a teacher end of, here's what I'm doing with your kiddo all day. And this is one way to build trust with parents and really build that community. And I think that trust through transparency and sharing is really important.
Absolutely.
Definitely agree with that, Tom, and I think there's so many tools that allow you to be able to connect with Twitter being one of them, but I also love how Remind and then just take a photo of students when you're on the field, you know, when you're doing an activity in class, and send it to them when parents are on the go, whether they're at work, you know, whether they're in commute, you know, going to the grocery store or to work, no matter where they are, even if they can't be in the classroom either, they'll get instantly be connected to their child's classroom and know, you know, what's going on in their child's life in the classroom. And I also love how you mentioned that parents now have a conversation starter to tell their children when they get home. And so I've noticed a couple other teachers that use Remind, you know, send a question to parents each day and say, you know, ask your child, you know, talk about plate tectonics, you know, ask your child what plate tectonics are as an example. And immediately the conversation at the dinner table is totally changed because they now have a point of context to ask their kid, you know, what they were learning in school that day. So, well, it looks like we're running out of time. I wanted to thank all of you so much for tuning in, and for Lisa, Tom, Kyle, and Jimmy for joining us. So you can follow us on Twitter at RemindHQ, and definitely check out some for Connected Educators Month. So that is at blog.remind.com. And I definitely want to get all of you to share your Twitter handles so that folks can get in touch with you. So, Lisa, why don't we start with you? How can people who are tuning in get in touch with you?
Okay, cool, Clara. You can reach me at Teaching with Soul without the I in the with on Twitter. And definitely go on to hashtag NTChat. I will be there frequently throughout the day, throughout the week, supporting my new teachers, supporting new and pre-service teachers to be able to get connected in ways that they might not have considered before. So thank you so much for allowing me to join this great conversation tonight.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us, Lisa. Jimmy, how can people who are tuning in reach you?
Well, a couple things. They can certainly join us on Iowa EdChat, IAEDCHAT, Iowa EdChat every Sunday. We do a chat on 8 a.m. Central Standard Time as well as 8 p.m. Central Standard Time each Sunday, so that's one way that you can visit what's happening in the great state of Iowa and connect with educators from all over the country. I'd also encourage people to follow our school hashtag because ultimately that's really what it's all about, and you can follow that at hashtag BetPride. Very, very proud of our school community in terms of how we continue to grow our community here in Bettendorf. And then finally, for my personal Twitter account, it's at Casas_Jimmy.
Great. And thanks again, Jimmy, for joining us tonight and sharing so many of your school stories. Kyle, how can people get in touch with you?
They can find me on Twitter at Kyle Pace, all one word. KylePace.com is where you can find more info about me, and that's where I blog occasionally as well.
And thanks again, Kyle, so much for taking the time to join us tonight. And Tom, how can teachers get in touch with you on social media?
And thanks, Clara, for having me on as well tonight. Quite an honor to be here with such a great company like Remind, that's for sure. So on Twitter, I'm at Thomas C. Murray. Online, my website is thomascmurray.com. And also EdTech Chat. Check that out on Monday nights where we're talking all things EdTech at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. You can find me there as well. And I would also point people towards the Alliance for Excellent Education where I work. We do a lot of everything's free, from papers to resources to research, at all four, as in the number, all four Ed is our Twitter handle there, and Digital Learning Day and those kinds of things, so they can check those out as well. All free.
Great, and thanks again so much for tuning in and sharing your insight and different resources. So you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Miss Clara Galan, and of course, please follow our Twitter handle at RemindHQ, where you can learn different teaching strategies and resources, as well as tips to use Remind. If you haven't checked out Remind yet, we're at remind.com. So we are a free mobile messaging service for teachers, students, and parents. And it's really great. You can send voice clips, attach photos and files, and send really important messages to students and parents without giving your personal contact information, which I know is huge for educators. So thanks again for tuning in tonight. You can follow the conversation on Twitter at RemindHQ, and I look forward to hearing all of your responses. Good night.
Hi.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Lisa. Nice meeting you.
See ya.
Nice to meet you too. Bye.
See you, Kyle. See you, Tom. Bye, Clara.
Oh.
Take us off air, Clara.